Right. Well, back in 2008, there was an Englishman named Greg Howe. He bought, oh, by the way, if kids want to head back for Children's Church, sorry about that. So Greg Howe, an Englishman, back in 2008, he bought a Christmas tree, and it was 35 feet tall. 35 feet. That's a big tree. The problem was he really actually didn't have a big house. He only had a 2-story house that was about 30 foot tall. So how did he get into his house? What did he do? Well, he cut the tree into 3 sections. He put the base, the biggest, longest branches, 15-foot long branches, in the bottom level of his house. Then he chopped off the middle, put that, somehow got it upstairs into his son's bedroom, and put that one in there. Then he took the very top chunk of that tree up onto his roof, and it was all in a line. And then he decorated this huge ornaments, over 2,000 lights. It's crazy. 2,000 lights. It took Howe and 7 of his friends 2 days to get it in there. I got a picture of it. You got to see this. So there's the bottom. There's the middle. That's the son's room. There's the top. And there's his son. That's his bedroom. That's why you get the Christmas season, right? So you can tell how big the ornaments were. I mean, those things are huge. Like, and lights, 2,000 lights, 160 big ornaments. He even had a star, if you can see way up there, a star on it. It's a big tree, but you know, it's also a dead tree, think about it. And, you know, outside of being a pretty tree, does it really do anything of any value, does it? It just sits there. Greg, the guy who did it, said, from the outside, it is a bit of an optical illusion because it appears to be one huge tree that has shot up through the ceilings and floorboards and out through the roof. A tree that shot up through the ceiling and floors and out through the roof. It's just an optical illusion. See, Isaiah 11 tells us that God planted a Christmas tree of sorts in Bethlehem. But his tree wasn't an optical illusion. So if you got your Bibles, open up to Isaiah 11. In the previous chapters, right before chapter 11, so chapters 9 and 10, God is saying how his plan is to cut down the trees of Assyria and Israel to make them low. Of Assyria, he says in Isaiah 10, 33 through 34, see, the Lord Almighty, will lop off the boughs with great power. The lofty trees will be felled. The tall ones will be brought low. He will cut down the forest thickest with an axe. Lebanon will fall before the mighty. God is going to bring Assyria down. Before that, in Isaiah 9, 14 and 18, regarding Israel, he says, the Lord will cut off from Israel both head and tail, both palm branch and reed in a single day. Surely wickedness burns like a fire. It consumes briars and thorns and sets the forest thickets ablaze so that it rolls upward in a column of smoke. So he's going to take Assyria and Israel and cut them down and bring them low. Because those trees symbolize the power and the majesty of those kingdoms. He's going to take an axe to go through and cut them down. There's nothing left of them when he gets through. But then, after he's done all of that, cut through, so he's going to leave something behind. In verse 1 of chapter 11, after he's cut down all the trees, so there's only stumps left, in Isaiah 11, verse 1. I'm in Corinthians. I'm totally in the wrong book. Isaiah 11. There shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from whose roots shall bear fruit. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, and the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And his delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide disputes by what his ears hear. But with righteousness shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt of his waist, and faithfulness the belt of his loins. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the lion and the fattened calf together, and the little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the cobra, and the weaned child shall put his hand over the adder's den. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. In that day the root of Jesse shall stand as a signal for the peoples. Of him shall the nations inquire, and his resting place shall be glorious. A shoot come forth from the stump of Jesse. After all the trees of Israel and Assyria have been cut down, there's still stumps. That's what he brings forth. This imagery, would have been very familiar to the Jews. They understand, olive trees are very common there. And the olive trees were very sturdy trees. The olive trees are supposed to food and medicine and fuel, and they used oil from olive oil. And they used that for anointing the kings and the priests and the prophets. It was virtually indestructible. They could grow in almost any soil type and flourish in great heat. They can live almost 500 years, some over 1,000. And even after they're cut down, even if a fire goes through, they'll still come forth. There's the stump of the old olive tree, and there's shoots coming out of it. They don't die easy. So in Isaiah 11, God is declaring that in the devastation left behind after the destruction of Assyria and Israel, after they had been chopped off and laid low, a branch would grow out of the stump of Jesse. A branch from a stump. See how much that contrasts with the lofty trees of Assyria. But God only needs a stump. So what was this branch, or really, who is this branch? Well, the Sunday school answer is always Jesus. There we go, yes, the Messiah. The prophecies about the coming of the Messiah started back in Isaiah 7, right? We covered a couple weeks ago. We learned the virgin would conceive and give birth to a son. We call his name Emmanuel. Then Isaiah 9, last week, the child would minister in Galilee. And he would be a great ruler and leader of his people, and the Messiah would be a light to those walking in the darkness. And now here in Isaiah 11, we're told this Messiah would be like a great tree growing out of the stump of Jesse. God was going to plant a Christmas tree in Bethlehem. And just like the tree in that Englishman's home, God's tree is a big tree. When Jesus fulfilled his mission, when he came to die for sins and risen from the dead, he ended up having huge influence More influence than anyone has ever had or ever will. One person described Jesus this way. He was born in an obscure village, the child of a peasant woman. He worked in a carpenter shop until he was 30. Then he became an itinerant preacher. He never wrote a book, which in today's world, if you don't write a book, you're not a cool pastor. You're not a big man. He never wrote a book. He never held an office. He never had a family. He never owned a house. He didn't go to college. He never traveled more than 200 miles from his home. He never did any of the things that usually accompany greatness. Another person observed Socrates, the renowned Greek philosopher. He taught for 40 years. Plato for 50 years. Aristotle for 40 years again. But Jesus only taught for 3.5 years. Yet his influence is infinitely more than the combinedness of all the Greek philosophers. Jesus painted no pictures. Yet some of the finest paintings of Raphael and Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, they got their inspiration from Jesus. Jesus wrote no poetry, but Dante, Milton, and scores of other great poets were inspired by him. Jesus composed no music. He wasn't a writer. Still, Haydn, Handel, Beethoven, Bach, Mendelssohn, some of their greatest songs, some of the greatest pieces are about Christ. Over 19 centuries have come and gone, and today he is still the central figure of the human race. Of all the armies that ever marched, of all the navies across the world, of all the governments that have set, of the kings and presidents and rulers that have reigned, have not affected the life of men on this earth as much as this one solitary life. The one solitary life, that single shoot that came up from the stump of Jesse, grew to such a large tree that he has changed culture and changed history. He's changed our lives. So the tree God planted became a big tree. But it's interesting that this shoot didn't grow out of the ground. You know, it grew out of the stump of Jesse. You know, it had to be a little bit of a support there, you know. When you go and buy a Christmas tree, I mean, whether it's a live or a fake one, do you just like set it on the ground? Stand. You have to put it in a base, right? If it's live, you got a little thing of water in there to keep it from getting dry, or not, you have the little base that screws it down. All right? It won't just stand there on its own. It's got to have some support there. The same way this prophecy in Isaiah tells us that God's tree also needed somebody to hold it up. See, at one point in his ministry, some of the Jews challenged Jesus in his authority to doing what he said he was doing. And Jesus told them, if I testify about myself, my testimony is not valid. In John 5:31. But see, what Jesus was talking about, back in the Old Testament law, from Deuteronomy, says you can't accept an accusation against someone unless you had 2 or 3 witnesses. And in that confrontation with those Jews, Jesus said he had several witnesses. He had his works. He had John the Baptist. He had his Father, God. And then he ended his teaching in John 5 with this. You diligently study the Scriptures because you think that by them you possess eternal life. These are the Scriptures that testify about me. See, in those Scriptures he's referencing, the Old Testament, there's over 300 prophecies about the coming Messiah, about Jesus, all of which Jesus fulfilled. And one of these prophecies declared that Messiah will be born of the line and lineage of David. And who was David's dad? Jesse. From the stump of Jesse. This prophecy was one of those that held up the tree, his ministry, to point to him as the Messiah. And you look at the prophecies that announce the coming of the Messiah. Let's look at the other founding men of other world religions. About 500 years before Christ, there's a man who was born who we now refer to as Buddha. He came up with what, he thought was a good idea, and he drew followers to himself, and this is a good idea. And he died. And his followers created religion around his teaching and exists to this day. But, Buddha arose from really relative obscurity, and no one had ever predicted his coming. People know Buddha is coming. There was no prophecy. He just showed up and made stuff up. There was no prophetic declaration that such a leader would come. There was no testimony to support his ministry. If you go 500 years after Christ was born, another man, Muhammad, he came with what he thought was good ideas and drew followers to himself. And when he died, his followers created religion around those ideas, and it continues today. Muhammad arose from relative obscurity. He was unknown, but there was no prophecies of his coming. No prophetic declarations. There was no testimony that supported him. But when Jesus was born, he came to fulfill thousands of years of prophecies. And one of those prophecies is to be born of the line of David, the son of Jesse. So we're seeing the tree God planted to be a big tree. The influence that Jesus had in his life. It's nice to know that Jesus' one solitary life influenced our world as much as he did. And we've seen that this tree God planted in Bethlehem was supported by prophecy. That's good. But Jesus, he didn't come into the world to be influential. He didn't come into the world just to fulfill all his prophecies. He says, I came that you may have life, and that you might have it more abundantly. See, Jesus came to give life. Jesus came to bear fruit. The rest in verse 1 says, and a branch from his roots shall bear fruit. Do Christmas trees bear fruit? Kind of the opposite, right? Well, you have to put the fruit on them, right? The ornaments, the lights to make them look good. Because Christmas trees are either dead or fake, We have to hang them, we have to decorate it. But see, the tree that God planted in Bethlehem, this Messiah who was to come, this tree would bear fruit. What kind of fruit was he going to bear? Well, let's read in 4 and 5 again. What would his ministry be like? Over the righteous he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. Here they're talking about his second coming. When he comes to rule, he's going to be in perfect rule. He'll strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. When he's coming again. As he's speaking of the first coming, the shoot of the stump, and now he's going into what the second coming will be like. Righteousness shall be the belt of his waist, and faithfulness the belt of his loins. His rule is going to be quite a bit different. Then we read on in Isaiah 6 through 10. I mean, look at the imagery here. The wolf lying with the lamb, the leopard with the goat, the calf and the lion and the fat calf lying together, the cow and the bear, the young, the lion shall eat right next to the ox. I mean, he's going against the natural order of things, right? But what's going to happen? It even goes beyond just animals. In verse 8, the nursing child, so an infant, shall play over the hole of the cobra. Who here would let their kids play with a cobra? That doesn't make any sense, right? And the weaned child, so just a little bit older, shall put his hand on the adder's den. An adder is still a very poisonous snake, one of the most poisonous around. Does that recall any You guys who went through the Genesis study, does this bring up anything? Maybe from Genesis 3? What was the curse to the serpent? There would be enmity between the serpent and the woman and her seed. That was the curse. Well, that curse is going to be made right. That curse is going to be reversed when the seed of the woman, a child, is playing with snakes. That's what his second coming is going to bring. That's pretty incredible. Verse 10. It says, in that day the root of Jesse who shall stand as a signal for the peoples, of him shall the nations inquire, his resting place shall be glorious. And then he goes in verse 11 to explain how he's coming back, bringing back the remnant of the Jews gathering together. And here it is referring to Jews. It's not referring to Gentiles. But thankfully, in Romans 12:15, the writer of Romans, 15:12, he takes that verse from Isaiah and puts it in light of the New Testament in Romans 15:12. And again, Isaiah says, the root of Jesse will come, even he who arises to rule the Gentiles. In him will the Gentiles hope. So we are part. We are going to be under the great rule of the root of Jesse. But how will all this take place? I mean, how will all this craziness of kid, like Abby's age, playing with adders? Well, look at verse 9, in the second half. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord. That is the key point. It's not just talking about intellectual knowledge, but knowing the Lord. The whole earth, even the animals. That's how we have lions laying next to lambs. And that's great for the future kingdom, the second coming. But what does that mean for us now? Do we see the effects of the knowledge of God around us? Here in the second coming, the whole earth will have the knowledge of God, and that will radically change everything happening. But I think we can see it here, even in our life, on a little more limited scale. When we see two things that would normally not be able to exist together, being able to exist because of God. A few days ago we had the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And I saw this story, and it's just incredible. And it fit really well what the knowledge of God can do. First person I want to introduce you to is Mitsuo Fuchida. Raised in Japan, of course. Raised to love Japan and hate the U.S. Went to military academy. Graduated, became a pilot. We all know the famous saying from Pearl Harbor, the Japanese uttered, Tora, 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 like much of a successful attack. And it was uttered by the leader of the attack. This guy was the leader of the attack on Pearl Harbor. He led the air attack. Mitsuo Fuchida. Fast forward to the end of the war. He's growing in, he's going up the ranks. Hiroshima. He was in Hiroshima, but the morning he was called away to Tokyo for a military conference. And then the nuke dropped on Hiroshima. And after the war, he was being interviewed for war crimes. Not directly on him, but interviews going through the process. He was meeting a lot with General MacArthur because it was high ranking. And on one of his times into where he was going to be interviewed, he got off the train and somebody handed him a pamphlet called, "I Was a Prisoner of Japan." Now I'm going to stop his story here, and I'm going to start another story of Jacob Desseger. Actually, this is a picture of Mitsuo Fuchida practicing for Pearl Harbor. Jacob Desseger, American. After Pearl Harbor, man, he was mad. You know, he wanted to go kill the people that attacked his country. We know how much people had for the Japanese back then. I know my grandpa, you know, even in his ripe old age, could not talk about the Japanese without using some very not nice slang terms for them. Even, you know, 50 years after the fact. And that's how this guy was. He was incensed after Pearl Harbor. Well, he volunteered for a thing called the Doolittle Raid. Doolittle Raid, where they flew B-25 Mitchell bombers off of aircraft carriers in April of 1942 with the goal of bombing Japan. It wasn't really going to do any damage, but a morale booster. And then land in China. The problem was they had to take off early because they were spotted by a fishing boat. They had to ditch in China, but in Japanese-held China. 1942, he was held POW for over 40 months. And we know the Japanese did not treat their POWs nice. For them, being captured was, you're a coward. You weren't worth it. So they tortured our POWs. This is a picture of him after his release. He's probably already been fed up quite a bit and cleaned up before they took this picture. See how much thinner he is. 40 months he was a POW in China. But while he was in China, his camp was able to get a hold of a Bible. And upon reading it, he was reading through the Bible, and he realized the power of the Bible and changed life, and he gave his life to Christ as a POW while in the midst of torture. After the war, he was freed. He went back to the U.S., went to school, and then he returned to Japan as a missionary. One of the first things he did was publish his testimony in a pamphlet called, "I Was a Prisoner of Japan." The very same pamphlet that Mitsuo Fuchida was handed on his way to be interviewed for war crimes. Well, Mitsuo read the pamphlet, then he went and bought a Bible for himself, and he was saved while reading through the Bible. And he became a great evangelist in Japan. He even came over to the U.S. and went with Billy Graham. Well, these two had to meet. In 1950, they met. An American. He wanted to kill Japanese. He was tortured by Japanese for 40 months. The Japanese, he was trained his whole life to kill Americans, who led the attack on Pearl Harbor, are sitting right next to each other. Is that the knowledge of God? Is that people experiencing the love of God? It's amazing what God can do. Less than a decade ago, 8 years, 9 years, they saw each other, they would kill each other on sight. No questions asked. But God took that and turned it for good. He reached out and he touched these two men. See, when Jesus touches people, people are changed. Lives that are broken, he fixes. He heals what is sick. He straightens out what is warped. He breaks hatred. He brings healing in all areas. In your homes, many of you have beautiful Christmas trees decorated with lights and garland and ornaments. That's great. But those trees are either dead when this season passes, you'll be toss them away or put them back up in boxes. But see, here's another tree, a living tree, and this is the one that you want in your home. Because this tree, this Jesus of Nazareth, the shoot from the stump of Jesse, is something you'll never want to throw away. Never something you just want to store in a box. Because his life brings change to your life. See, we desperately need a Savior. There's no doubt about it. This time, when we should be preparing him room in our hearts, we often don't. We get busy. School, we have family, we have jobs, we have shopping to get done, food to be cooked, potlucks to get ready for, and more piles on. And we lose sight of why we need Jesus, why we need him to come. I got a short video here as we